West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So there is a crisis on the border. The last time the Border Patrol saw this number of migrants trying to cross in a month was 2 decades ago. This morning, the Ed Board for the Washington Post is demanding a coherent strategy. So yes, President Biden has a real problem on his hands here, and his critics are capitalizing on it. Listen to former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who is echoing the tone of far-right extremists when it comes to immigration reform.
They don't come all the way across Mexico for the purpose of visiting for 2 days. They want to be in America, and I think what's hard for most of us to accept is that the anti-American left would love to drown traditional, classic Americans with as many people as they can who know nothing of American history, nothing of American tradition, nothing of the rule of law. And I think that when you go and you look at the radical left, this is their ideal model, is to get rid of the rest of us because we believe in George Washington or we believe in the Constitution.
That is awfully close to what's known as the Great Replacement Theory, the theory that white people are being replaced by non-white people, especially immigrants. In recent years, it has worked into a conspiracy theory that falsely alleges Jewish people are orchestrating the entire thing. It's ridiculous. Remember this moment from 2017 in Charlottesville.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
That is the same theory we're talking about here, also believed by a man who allegedly killed 11 at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018, and another man who allegedly killed 23 at a Walmart in El Paso in 2019. And now similar words from a former Speaker of the House. Former key Trump administration officials have also been openly slamming legal immigration. Take Stephen Miller, still a senior advisor to the ex-president.
The cliche is illegal immigration equals bad, legal immigration equals good. But you've all heard that cliche before. The problem with that cliche is that just because something is legal doesn't always mean it's good, right? After 5 decades of record immigration, what we need is a timeout so that we can take stock of everybody who's here and those who are here lawfully.
And here's Steve Cortez, who advised Trump's 2020 campaign, suggesting a new form of a contract with America to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows.
One of the things I would propose putting in there is a moratorium, a halt temporarily on even legal immigration.
We need to halt the legal immigration until we can get something controlled at the southern border.
Again, legal immigration. It is a process that is tough. So tough that green cards can take an average of over 5 years to get for immigrants sponsored by American employers or citizen family members. And that was in 2018 before COVID. It doesn't end there. Here's how Fox's chief propagandist compared what he described as mass violence committed by undocumented immigrants in the United States to Hungary's strategy.
The Biden administration did this on purpose, and they're still doing it. And that is exactly why Democrats become hysterical when you mention the obvious successes that are on display here in Hungary on the immigration question. They don't want you to know that there is an option to the chaos and filth and crime growing all around us.
Now, Hungary is run by a leader, Viktor Orban, who's put razor wire along the border to stop refugees from even trying to seek asylum. At one point, he'd kept over 100 refugees detained in border zones for over a year. It's been ruled illegal by the EU's top court, and that is the backdrop for that praise. And of course, there is more. Some conservative lawmakers and pundits, some of the same ones arguing against masking in schools to protect unvaccinated children, are saying COVID-19 is a problem, but only at the border. In Texas, new coronavirus cases are on a steep climb. The 7-day average hit nearly 12,000 new cases yesterday, but they say it's not the state residents' low uptake of vaccine that's to blame. If you ask Senator Ted Cruz, it's this.
If you don't want to see this pandemic come back with the Delta variant, or most of these illegal immigrants coming in haven't been vaccinated. They're being put in cages with other people who are COVID positive. They're spreading COVID and then releasing COVID in our communities. This is lunacy.
The Biden administration has been using a Trump administration policy known as Title 42. It means that hundreds of thousands of migrants at the southern border, including asylum seekers, can't enter because of the COVID public health emergency. Congressman Chip Roy, just a couple of weeks ago, said this.
And here we are saying, we're going to have to wear masks on the floor of the House, but we're going to do nothing to stop the flow of people coming across our border. Republicans should be ashamed of themselves. I introduced legislation for a discharge petition to require the enforcement of Title 42 so that we will turn people away at the border who have COVID rather than forcing this ridiculousness on the American people.
Again, the Biden administration is enforcing Title 42. In fact, since Biden took office, over 510,000 people have been expelled under that rule. That is nearly twice as many people as those who were apprehended. And while Congressman Chip Roy is complaining about wearing masks, you know who also has to wear them? Migrants apprehended by Customs and Border Protection, according to a statement obtained by the Washington Post. CBP and Immigration and Customs Enforcement also told the Washington Post they do widespread testing of people who stay in custody. And while Texas Governor Greg Abbott is blocking local governments from imposing their own mask mandates, saying that Texas is past the time of government mandates, he has imposed a different kind of mandate on state troopers, ordering them to pull over cars they deem to be possibly transporting migrants. Critics are pointing out this could lead to widespread racial profiling. And then there's Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis. About 1 in 5 new cases of COVID in the United States, 1 in 5 in the country, are coming out of Florida. According to DeSantis, it's because of the border with Mexico.
Joe Biden has taken to himself to try to single out Florida over COVID. This is a guy who ran for president saying he was going to, quote, shut down the virus. And what has he done? He's imported more virus from around the world by having a wide open southern border. Why don't you do your job? Why don't you get this border secure? And until you do that, I don't want to hear a blip about COVID from you.
Now, I know you might be asking, does Florida share a border with Mexico? And you'd be right. Nope. But DeSantis has an explanation for that.
You have hundreds of thousands of people pouring across every month. Not only are they letting them through, they're then farming them out all across our communities across this country, putting them on planes, putting them on buses.
That claim is not based in fact. There's no proof of some large-scale importation of COVID-sickened migrants to Florida that could be blamed for the terrible infection numbers in DeSantis' state. And as we noted, hundreds of thousands of immigrants are being expelled. And Senator Rand Paul, who just slammed the CDC for offering guidelines on safely reopening schools, is making this bizarre claim with zero evidence.
They're taking kids from down at the border who may have it, and they're plucking them up and putting them all over the United States as if they're wishing to seed the country with a new variant. It's an awful thing to do.
There are some in the Republican Party who insist that COVID isn't so bad. Certainly not bad enough to have kids wear masks in school, even if they're too young to be vaccinated. But actually, it is bad. They say very bad. A threat, in fact, if it's undocumented immigrants bringing it into the country. And again, no evidence that they're responsible for the COVID surge in U.S. communities. It is the centuries-old trope of demonizing foreign people as diseased. The R naught on that virus is sky high, and these conservative voices know that. They're the vectors here, infecting Americans they profess to care about with misinformation. And the rising case numbers, the lagging vaccination numbers are proof of that.
It is Tuesday, the 10th of August of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Did you know that a small scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world? Yes, it will. You know, Emerald has his BAM. I've got my hot smoked Hungarian paprika, at least on Tuesdays. At least. Oh, one other note as a reminder. Yes, roasted corn goes in the chowder here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Be forewarned. I like to soak it in lime water as well, because, you know, that's what we do. Hey, I came across this weird, concerning report about the sandwich Nazi who attacked Officer Sicknick, you know, the one who died because he was sprayed with bear spray. He's been ordered released by a 3-judge appellate panel. I guess they're from the Federalist Society. They said that the lower court and another 3-judge panel erred in how dangerous this guy is. According to this 3-judge appellate court, he never committed a crime before. He doesn't belong to any extremist organization, in spite of the fact that he calls himself the sandwich Nazi, and the reason for that is because, you know, Jews are not going to replace him. And they just don't see how he's a danger to the community, and he's been ordered released with a cop killer. Jesus. I thought that it didn't matter. I mean, if you kill a cop, that's usually reason to keep you in jail. It doesn't matter what your rap sheet or lack of had or didn't have. You're a cop killer. Yeah, well, I guess Officer Sicknick was the wrong kind of cop. He was just protecting the United States of America. The other side, all those Capitol cops and D.C. cops were called traitors when the traitors came to take over the government. Oh my God. All right. Well, I say purge every Federalist Society judge from the whole judiciary. They're packed through for decades. They played the long game. Moved their pieces around here and there. Lost a pawn, maybe. But for the greater good, they were right about at checkmate. We've been in check for quite a while. And now they're trying to close down the schools and blame it. And, well, they don't have to blame it. They just have to use it, and that's the pandemic. Your child will not be allowed to wear a mask, and none of the teachers will be either. Well, I'm not sending my kid to that school. And DeSantis and Abbott go, oh, please don't send them. Except they will carve out exceptions for, you know, private schools and charter schools that they all have investments in. Oh, you can wear a mask there. It's private enterprise, except for those cruise ships. Yep. Now, I'm not going to go on a cruise ship. I don't know why anybody would want to get into a much smaller thing like an airplane, a jet. It just seems like you're really on top of each other. Do I really want to do that? No. So we're in dire straits, and it's almost as if it's on purpose by their part. Because the more that this virus does its thing, the more it has an opportunity to mutate. And what happens if we get a COVID that's like, it just eats your lungs? It's a lung-eating virus. I would call it a bacteria, but it's not a bacteria. But you know what I mean. It could mutate in any fashion if we don't do what we need to do. Also, please, all those people out there, talking about herd immunity, polio and smallpox were not eradicated by herd immunity. You know what eradicated them? That's right, vaccines. So it's almost like it's on purpose. Are they trying to decimate the population in some way? Are they trying to manufacture a disaster so that God's appointed leader, who happens to have really wispy blonde hair, that he, sculpts into a bouffant somehow, will rise from the ashes of Mar-a-Lago and rule as he was judged to rule by powers higher. Well, there's nothing higher than you know who, Donnie. Donnie Two Scoops. Following the, Now, some people would say the cliched demagogic type of strategy. Let's be more precise. He's doing a Hitler. I don't know where his Mein Kampf is. Could have been Art of the Deal. Maybe that was his Mein Kampf. Maybe. But, he didn't really write it. We know that. He's incapable of writing it. Stephen Miller is crafting the document, the tome, as we speak. So we are in perilous times. It always kind of bothers me because I remember when Trump was first, I like to say installed. But he won the Electoral College by hook and by crook. Not or, and by crook. With a little bit of Cyrillic help, shall we say. But we all sucked it up. I remember my Trump bro, my maggot brother, gloating. And when I tried to explain what a mandate was, about the popular vote, before I could even get my sentence out, he was on top of me saying, "Are you saying he didn't win?" So, it's like gish galop bullshit, because then you go, well, look, he won the Electoral College, and then it's like, well, just get over it then. What? All I'm doing is expressing in politics what's known as a mandate and what a mandate does. But if you are believing that there's no opposition, and any opposition that there is must be foreign or other, from another planet, evil, has to be eradicated, replaced, we go down those perilous roads. So while we pretty much just sucked it up and got out the vote, not once did we ever talk about gather armaments for and have pep rallies to get our pep up to storm the capital of the United States in a violent coup. Why? Because we are Americans. We get out the vote. Only Nazis would attempt a coup. So I don't need to hear about that the only way that we can get those people to take the vaccine is to be mindful of their feelings. And we have to talk nice to them. It doesn't work. They're Nazis. You cannot trust a Nazi. A Nazi will stab you in the back every time. They have a prime directive. And it's not to bring goodwill to the universe. The sooner that we all embrace that and get over this idea that we have to be nice to the Nazis? No. And some might argue, well, being mean to the Nazis doesn't work either. Well, you know what? We were smarter than the Nazis. We kicked their ass before. And their ilk that came down through history. Why would we presume that it's going to prevail this time? Well, because we're critical thinkers and look, we let our guard down again. Okay, well, I'm kind of tired of being a counterpuncher, be honest with you. It'd be nice to take some proactive measures. And when I say purge Federalist Society judges, I'm not kidding you. They are working for hostile foreign powers. Oligarchs, probably of our own making, behind the scenes. Yes, we have our oligarchs. They don't want to be called that because of the negative connotation. Well, yeah. That's how social shaming works when you believe in law and order. Otherwise, you're just a Nazi. And I don't use that word lightly. Took me forever. I didn't even want to call somebody a sandwich Nazi. A soup Nazi. I couldn't, But this is the Hitler model. When Germany, was booming, the only thing that caused Nazism to rise was the stock market crash of 29. Germany's economy was booming, and it was a social democracy. It was a liberal democracy. And democracy seemed to be working. How is that? So it was rather difficult for old Adolf to, convince the German public, there's some really bad shit on the horizon, and the Jews are the fault. Seems like everybody was doing pretty good, and then the stock market crashed. Some people have called that a gift from heaven. I suppose if you're a demagogue and you think that you have been appointed by God to rule the world, only I can do it. Only I can fix it. It's disaster capitalism, and we all know what that's all about. Well, time's a burning up. What's on the rest of the menu here as we start off in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, the GOP is ramping up the Great Replacement theory because liberals are forcing them to. Pretty much because, these Republican governors are killing so many of their citizens that they got to blame black and brown people, even when they don't have a common border with all these caravans of diseased migrants coming over their borders. Who knew? On the rest of the menu, fake COVID vaccination cards worry college officials. A federal class action lawsuit alleges Brown University failed to protect women from sexual misconduct. And U.S. health officials are investigating the latest fatal case of a rare tropical disease typically found in South Asia. Don't blame climate, just don't you do that. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where France will require a virus pass for restaurants and cafes or travel by plane, train, or bus. Good for them. And 2 spacecraft will make a Venus flyby within hours of each other. On their way to other destinations, by the way. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link right there by the social media scroll. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and thank you, Kelly, for doing so. Across the page from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford, hey, how about a few Snickers bars and 3 Musketeer bar? Or a espresso type coffee drink. If you could send the equivalent funds our way once a month, we are able to pool those funds with funds that we pull out of our own wallets and pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue this resistance against the hostile takeover of the United States of America and democracy as we know it. Indeed. So thank you for your generosity all these many years, 10 to be exact, and counting. More than 10, actually, and counting. So thank you for your generosity, and thank you for your generous contribution in the future because, well, we like to thank people for that as well. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter. I take care of me. I am at Justice Putnam on Twitter. I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's if you happen to be there about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. Show notes and links. That's right. That's where the real reportage is. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Rosalind Romero brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, and she is from the Associated Press. As the Delta variant of the coronavirus sweeps across the United States, a growing number of colleges and universities are requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccination for students to attend in-person classes. But the new mandate has opened the door for those opposed to getting the vaccine to cheat the system, according to interviews with students, education, and law enforcement officials. I should also note that she has the dateline here at San Luis Obispo, California. That's where Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is. And I had a lot of friends that went there. That was a sister school to the university that I first attended because I thought I was going to play football. I went to Pomona, which in its own way is a very beautiful campus as well. It just happens to be along the I-10 in what we all call the smog corridor. Pretty campus, though. Both faculty and students at dozens of schools interviewed by the AP say they are concerned about how easy it is to get fake vaccine cards. Across the internet, a cottage industry has sprung up to accommodate people who say they won't get vaccinated for either personal or religious reasons. So they got to have a fake ID to prove it. That's how real their religion is. An Instagram account with the username Vaccination Cards sells laminated COVID-19 vac cards for $25 each. A user on the encrypted messaging app Telegram offers COVID-19 vaccine card certificates for as much as $200 a piece. Well, it's what the market will bear now, isn't it? What's under my hat? On Twitter, one user with more than 700 followers tweeted, "My daughter bought 2 fake IDs online for $50 while in college, shipped from China. Anyone have the link for vaccine cards?" According to a tally by the Chronicle of Higher Education, at least 675 colleges and universities now require proof of inoculations. The process to confirm vaccination at many schools can be as simple as uploading a picture of the vaccine card to the student's portal. But Benjamin Mason Meyer, a global health policy professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, questions how institutions can verify those records. The United States, unlike most countries which have electronic systems in place, is basing its vaccination on a flimsy paper card, he said. Meyer tweeted last week that he spoke with several students who were worried about the accessibility of fraudulent vaccine cards and that they knew a fellow student who had submitted one to the university. Well, turn them in! If you see something, say something. It's important to note that UNC Chapel Hill has not found any instances of a student uploading a fake vaccine card. Those claims are simply heresy at this point, the school said. Wow, that's how you cover your ass? But other university staff and faculty have expressed their concern over the alleged forgery of vaccine cards. Rebecca Williams, a research associate at UNC's Lindbergh Comprehensive Cancer Center and Center for Health Promotion and Disease Prevention, said while she is concerned by these claims, she is not surprised. This is why I think the development of a reliable national digital vaccine passport app is very important for the sake of all the organizations and businesses that want to require proof of vaccination for employees, students, or business patrons, Williams said. And the AP spoke with several students across the country who did not want to be identified, but said they were aware of attempts to obtain fake cards. Some school officials acknowledge that a foolproof system is impossible. We will be reporting on what they're doing in France, but I'll just say this. They have a UPC code. Yep. Get it on your phone. Get it from the hospital. I think you would be then good to go. In March, the concern over COVID-19 vaccination cards prompted the FBI to issue a joint statement with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, urging people not to buy, create, or sell fabricated vaccine cards. The unauthorized use of the seal of an official government agency such as HHS or the CDC is a federal crime that carries a possible fine and a maximum of 5 years in prison. Philip Marcello of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Brown University has systematically and repeatedly failed to protect women from rape and other sexual misconduct, according to a federal class action lawsuit filed recently by 4 current and former female students. The suit, which was filed last Friday in Providence Federal Court, alleges the Ivy League school in Rhode Island actively prevented the reporting of incidents of sexual violence and perpetuated a culture of silence on campus. One of the women said she was advised against making a formal complaint after being sexually assaulted at a party hosted by rugby team members because it happened off campus, where officials said it would be more difficult to hold someone accountable. Another said the university found her alleged assailant responsible for her sexual assault, but then named him a speaker at the school's commencement ceremony while he was appealing the case. Mike Stobie of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. health officials are investigating the latest fatal case of a rare tropical disease typically found in South Asia. The unidentified person who died last month in Georgia was the fourth U.S. case this year of melioidosis caused by a bacteria that lives in soil and water. None of the cases from Georgia, Kansas, Minnesota, or Texas traveled internationally, puzzling experts. The CDC said 2 died. Federal health officials sent an alert about the latest case to doctors, asking them to consider melioidosis if they face a bacterial infection that does not respond to antibiotics, even if the patient has not traveled outside the country. The CDC said the infection is treatable if caught early and treated correctly. Though the illnesses were found in different states at different times, the agency said lab analysis showed the infections were closely related. We'll be following that bacteria as it develops. Okay, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Sarah Vitak. Modern medicine and bacterial pathogens are in an arms race. We use antibiotics to keep them at bay, and then they adapt to become immune to those antibiotics, evolving into superbugs. The battle has been an asymmetric one. We just don't have that many options in the fight. Most of our antibiotics come from bacteria, the vast majority from a single genus, Streptomyces. And most antibiotics use the same handful of strategies to attack bacteria. But there's a reason that we only use a tiny fraction of the antibiotic chemicals that exist in nature.
This search for completely new substances was unsuccessful for the past 30 years. It's very difficult to make sure that we find an antibiotic, so a substance that's produced by microorganisms and that's toxic to other microorganisms, but that is not toxic to humans.
Miriam Rosenbaum is a professor of synthetic biotechnology at the Hans Noll Institute in Germany. But how, if they're so hard to find, do scientists know that we have only found a tiny fraction of the antibiotic substances that exist in nature?
We do know that because for the past 20 years, we were in this biological revolution of sequencing.
Researchers like Rosenbaum have taken that revolution underground, literally, like into the dirt.
And so with these environmental sequencing campaigns, we found out that actually the microbial world is much, much bigger than we thought it is. Now, this is how we know that we only have 5% in the lab, because we see, just looking at the DNA in the soil sample, we see there are 95% more. That where are they? We don't have the cells. Yeah? We can know more than their name or more than their existence there. We see what genes they have.
They don't have the cells because only about 1 to 15% of the species of bacteria in nature can currently be grown in the lab. It's like dusting a room for fingerprints, only to find that the place is totally covered, and in ones that you don't have IDs for, and also that the party's still going all around you, but you can't see the guests. What Rosenbaum can tell from the sequences is that these unseen bacteria do make more and different kinds of antibiotics. So, which bacteria are making them? And is it possible to keep them alive long enough to make the ID? Rosenbaum's answer? Microscopic bacterial pool parties.
Slowly, over a long time, went smaller and smaller, and now we are at these picoliter-sized droplets, so 200 picoliters. That's way smaller than a milliliter that you can still see, or a microliter that you can barely see. It's 1,000,000 times smaller than these microliters. And so these picoliter droplets now are the houses for these microorganisms.
So microscopic water houses.
And we put one cell in one of these droplets. So every cell gets their own house. And then, since these are so small, we can cultivate millions of these small droplets houses in one experiment. And so we take out of one soil sample of a few grams, we get millions of bacterial cells, and we put them all in their individual house. And then we see what grows.
The work was published in the journal eLife. And what they found is that they were able to grow a completely different set of bacteria than what would normally grow using traditional cell culturing techniques.
Typically, we put them either in a shake flask that's like the size of a hand, and then we have a few microbial cells in there that are basically lost in an ocean, or we put them on an agar plate on a solid medium, while in the environment they don't grow in this type of environment.
Giving them their own private space to grow separately also probably helps.
To take them out of the competition, to give them all a chance to actually grow up and to grow without competition and without somebody producing antibiotics and fighting against them and so on.
And the micro water houses are proving to be very flexible incubators. They're tiny, so millions can be grown together in one test tube, and they can be manipulated. So they can be put onto agar plates individually, giving the bacteria a better shot at growing there, or they can be used to do experiments with different conditions inside of each different droplet. But the goal has always been to turn them into tiny antibiotic factories.
So we took all the droplets that had growth in them, and now we added an indicator bacterium that has a light label, a fluorescence label. If these indicator bacteria are able to grow and they're added to the droplet, then we get a light signal, a green or red signal of this droplet.
So red or green light coming from a droplet means the wild bacteria isn't producing antibiotic. Because if it was, that would kill the indicator bacteria in the drop. The color of the light conveniently tells the researchers what type of bacteria is still alive. But a dark droplet, so one without any light coming from it, means that the wild bacteria is killing the indicator bacteria, stopping it from growing and stopping it from producing the light. So it must be producing an antibiotic then.
Yeah, so we can select all the dark droplets and then deposit them. Now we want to get these cultures. We want to get whoever is producing the antibiotic. And now we want to get those out of the droplet.
This means that they can screen millions of bacteria for antibiotic properties pretty quickly and easily. Inside these microscopic bacterial pool parties, humans might just find an upper hand in the arms race against the superbugs. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sarah Vitak.
He's running first, second, third. No! He stopped between third and home. What the heck?
Ooh, that's not the time to stop. And now's not the time to stop wearing a mask. Vaccines are a game changer. But the game's not over. Mask up until you're vaccinated. Let's finish strong. For more information, please visit cdc.gov/masks. A message by CDC and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
On January 6, 2021, America experienced an attempted insurrection, and that assault on democracy in a different form continues today.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Shortly after the insurrection was quelled, members of President Trump's party condemned him for fostering and aiding and abetting the coup. But no longer. The days of condemnation are gone, replaced with a campaign of disinformation bolstered by the acquiescence of silence. That campaign has described the armed insurrection as a normal, peaceful tourist visit, absolves those who said they wanted to kill the Speaker of the House and hang the Vice President, claims with no basis that the Speaker of the House bears responsibility for the attack, insists that the 500 or so persons accused of crimes, entitled, of course, to a presumption of innocence, for their participation in the assault on the Capitol are victims, and opposes any investigation into what happened on January 6th. Here's the most frightening part. There's no guarantee that the American democratic experiment will continue. The right to vote is at grave risk, and therefore, so is democracy itself. The time to act to preserve democratic institutions is now. To paraphrase the aphorism often attributed to the 18th century Irish statesman Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for men and women of good will to do nothing.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
A recent headline blared, "Labor shortages end when wages rise." Gosh, Captain Obvious, what an amazing discovery. Someone notify the Nobel Prize Committee, for surely this revolutionary revelation will win this year's prize in economics. Better yet, someone notify that gaggle of Republican governors whose theory of labor economics begins and ends with a medieval demand that workers be whacked with a stick to make them do what the bosses want. At issue is the furious complaint by restaurant chains, nursing homes, big ag, and other low-wage employers that they have a critical labor shortage. It seems that millions of workers today are hesitant to take jobs because there's no affordable child care, or the jobs they're offered expose them and their families to COVID-19, or the work itself is abusive and demeaning, or all of the above. Business chieftains wail that they've been advertising thousands of jobs for waiters, poultry workers, nursing assistants, and such, but they can't get enough takers. So corporate-serving governors have rushed to their rescue, shouting, "Whack 'em with a stick!" These mingy politicians are stripping away jobless benefits, trying to force workers to take any crappy job they're offered. It gives new meaning to the term workforce. But wait, there's an honest way to get the workers they need. Offer fair wages. As the owner of a small chain of restaurants in Atlanta notes, when he stopped lowballing wages, he not only got the workers he needed, but we started to get a better quality of applicants. That translated to better service, happier customers, and more business. This is Jim Hightower saying, if you treat employees as cheap, that's what you'll get. But if you view them as valuable assets, that's what they'll be, and you'll all be better off. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by our new Lowdown Happy Hour, now live streaming on Facebook from the Chat and Chew Cafe, with kick-ass political spark plugs like Beto O'Rourke, musical champions like Marcia Ball, and grassroots change makers like the New Georgia Project and People's Action. The Lowdown Happy Hour is reaching out to you to help put the move in movement. So grab a libation and join the fun. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1922. That was the day 1,300 workers from 4 railroad brotherhoods walked off the job in Joliet, Illinois, near Chicago. The walkout threatened to paralyze freight service for steel mills in nearby Gary and other regional industries. 400,000 railroad shopmen had been on strike across the country for nearly 7 weeks. Newspaper headlines that day warned a general strike of 2 million trademen loomed on the horizon. Brotherhood leaders promised sympathy strikes in response to threats made against their members by troops on duty at railroad centers and yards. There were also real concerns about the health and safety of trainmen, given rolling stock was no longer being maintained. In Joliet, workers stayed away under threats from troops. Additionally, Illinois Central trainmen faced threats from striking miners throughout Kentucky and Illinois who warned, "Stop transporting non-union coal or suffer the consequences." Resentment had been building up against state guard troops stationed in Illinois yards. Earlier in the week, striking shopmen had engaged in a fatal confrontation with Joliet sheriffs that left a striker and a railroad detective dead and scores injured. Riot orders were called when authorities sought to arrest striking shopmen who had stormed the home of a scab. Brotherhood workers refused to return to work unless the troops were removed. Warren Stone, president of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, stated, quote, "We are not going to have our men shot up or beaten up or threatened by armed guards at railroad shops and yards. When the men cannot go to work without having irresponsible armed guards endangering their lives, they may go home and stay there. There will be 100 more cases soon if conditions are not changed." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of about 102, which means it'll be warmer than that registered forecast. Sun and clouds mixed with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Lows tonight will be in the mid to upper 60s. Some clouds will give way to mainly clear skies overnight. Winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then mostly sunny skies tomorrow. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Pushing around, temps around 110. Thank you very much. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have been updated from the weekend. And yes, we have perilously terrible increase in numbers. We now stand at 134,087 confirmed cases, with 2 more confirmed deceased, where we now stand at 166 dead in this county. Grass pollen is rated moderate here outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is moderate at 75 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 8. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.01 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 70%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 72 and partly cloudy. Paris is 75 and cloudy. Rome is 93 and fair. Kyiv is 83 and fair. Kabul is 84 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 80 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 84 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 and clear. San Francisco, California is 57 and cloudy. And New York is 79 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Sylvie Corbet of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. France took a big step into a post-pandemic future by requiring people to show a QR code proving they have a special virus pass before they can enjoy restaurants and cafes or travel by plane, train, or bus across the country. The measure is part of a government plan to encourage more people to get a COVID-19 vaccine shot and slow down a surge in infections as the highly contagious Delta variant now accounts for most cases in France. Over 36 million people in France, or more than 54% of the population, are fully vaccinated. The special pass is issued to people who are vaccinated against COVID-19 or have proof of a recent recovery from the virus or who have a recent negative test. The measure also applies to tourists visiting the country. In the southern city of Marseille, several restaurant owners did not check clients for the pass. An Associated Press reporter saw on Monday yesterday. Many in the entertainment business are annoyed that the government is foisting such a job on them. The owner of the Backstage restaurant and bar in a theater district on Paris's left bank said the checks made him feel like a police officer, but he still followed government orders. One client, Miriam Karzaman, said she was prepared and it posed no problem. And another, Sonia Hamish, said she was not bothered either. People without a pass where it is required risk a fine of about $158 US, the French government said. For the first week of implementation, police controls will not lead to sanctions for non-compliance, but will be an occasion to explain the law.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Associated Press staff brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 spacecraft are set to swoop past Venus within hours of each other this week, using the maneuver to do a little bit of bonus science on the way to their main missions at the center of our solar system. The European Space Agency Solar Orbiter Probe, a cooperation with NASA, will swing around Venus, swung around Venus early today using the planet's gravity to help put it on a course to observe the sun's poles. And about 33 hours later, the European-Japanese spacecraft Bepi Colombo will get even closer to Venus in a maneuver designed to help it slow down sharply and safely steer into the orbit of Mercury in 2025. Without the flyby, we would not be able to reach our target planet, said Elsa Montanon, the spacecraft operations manager for Bepi Colombo. The energy required to enter into orbit of Mercury would be prohibitively expensive in terms of propellant. Both probes have numerous scientific instruments on board, some of which will be used to take a closer look at Venus as they zoom by. The measurements will add to those taken by the Japanese robot Akatsuki, which is already in orbit around Earth's hotter neighbor. NASA and the European Space Agency are planning to send 3 more missions to Venus toward the end of the decade. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but we will meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Going out. Petit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.